This is Jennifer Hale, and you're listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And, I should go.
The tangents we continue all the way to episode 285 of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And literary and film professor Thomas Leach said, "The book will always be better than any adaptation because it's always better at being itself." But is he right? Let's find out. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. So glad you could join us. Let's start off like we do every week with a virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem.
This is Chrissy in Salt Lake City.
This is Sally from Wisconsin.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello everyone.
Hello.
I got a case of the sleep bees. It's like I've got the it's like I've got the post convention, the
Exhaustion.
exhaustion. I didn't even have to leave my house to go to SegCon, so I don't know, it's psychologically built in. I don't know.
Maybe.
My brain is like, you attended panels, you must be tired.
Yes. You need to take a nap and process all this information that you heard.
I guess so. It's like, you might not have been like moving around physically, but your brain was still working.
I guess. I don't know. Well, but I'll talk about that momentarily. First, we need to do the news. So.
Yes. And, well, we knew this was coming, although there was still that little tiny glimmer of hope that it would that it would not be so, but Salt Lake FanX announced a few days the 2020 iteration will surprise not be happening in person. And if anybody is truly surprised by that, I wish I had your positive, optimistic.
Yeah. Allow me to quote Iago in Aladdin.
"Oh, there's a big surprise! That's an incredible... I think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die from that surprise!"
They had already sent out an email a couple weeks ago saying it hasn't been canceled yet, but we're monitoring the situation. It doesn't look good, and now it's official. It didn't look good. But they are, it sounds like they're doing much the same as what other cons have been doing. If you have your ticket for this year already, it'll roll over to next year. If you can't go next year, they're willing to work with you on a case-by-case basis. So all that information's on their website. They will be doing some online panels. It's just, they haven't announced the details about that quite yet, but sounds like they've got some stuff in the works already. So I just was like, I'm tired of being an adult about this. I'm really disappointed, but I can't blame them. Nope. I mean, there's been, like everywhere else, been a spike in cases.
A lot of places that had been reopened are closing back up again.
Yeah, and they're hoping they don't have to close Utah back up. Although Salt Lake proper. It never really fully opened up. They had like the whole red, orange, yellow, green thing, and most of the state was yellow because holy crap, we're mostly rural except for the one little spot.
Yeah, it's like you're already socially distant.
Yeah, right, I mean the places like where some of my siblings live, where my parents live, they're like everyone's like stand 6 feet apart. They look around confused, move closer together. They're so spread out anyway. So most of the state is fine. It's the Salt Lake City area, which I know I say in my intro I'm in Salt Lake City, but I'm actually in a suburb. I'm in the valley still, but even where I am in the valley is different than Salt Lake City itself. Like where I am, it's okay. We still got to be careful, but Salt Lake City itself is still orange. That's what I was getting at. Everywhere else is either yellow or green in cases of places where there's practically nobody there. It's more cows than people, like where I grew up. But anyway, so that whole big tangent means, yes, there's no FanX, but they're going to be doing virtual stuff, which I'm glad they're still doing something. And I mean, Jared was planning on selling books at this con as well, and this was like the closest he's actually come to having a set agreement with somebody. All he had to do was pay the money and bring the books. And they were like, yeah, come be at our table. And con completely canceled. So I'm just like, seriously? It's like, are you ever gonna get to sell books at a convention? I have no idea. But anyway, so there's that. So hopefully if you were gonna go to FanX, you can still go next year. So your ticket's good for a year from now. Hopefully everything clears up by then.
Yeah. Moving on to better news, I guess. things that aren't canceled. I guess. We've got of course this drops. Like I stumbled across this like hours after we'd finished recording, I think last Monday. When we were all like, we need some good news.
Never fails.
Yes. I happened to stumble across someone who shared a link to an article that has a short snippet from the upcoming Sandman audio.
And by count, 2 more days?
Yes, I was going to say that now is, as of we're recording this, comes out the day after tomorrow. But you do get to hear a little bit of some of the cast. So, because it is a short, clip. But
I want more.
Yeah. It sounds really good. I'm in the middle of reading the comic. If you have library access to Hoopla through your local library, not every library does, but mine does, so I have access to Hoopla. They're all on Hoopla. I am the first installment that's getting released this week covers volumes 1 through 3. I am still in volume 1 and I still have 100 pages to go. These are hefty comics. So.
Well, I kind of started, and I mean, the pages are just chock full of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you need to take your time and look, because it's just like, if I don't pay attention, I just skim and read the text, I'm going to miss something knowing Neil Gaiman's writing.
Yeah, well, and you jump time. You jump a span of like almost 100 years in like the first volume, and then you also jump location going between different characters, because you've got our main, the Sandman, Dream, whatever you want to call him. He's your main character throughout all of it, but you jump between, because it also ties into the DC universe, so it's like at one point you're jumping to like Arkham Asylum, and so so there's a lot to it. There's a lot of characters, but I have read through the scene that's in the clip that's in this article, so when I was reading, I'm like, oh, that's the bit that I heard in the clip. So that was kind of fun. So that gives me an idea of how they've adapted the comic into the audio version. So, but it should be good. I'm excited. I wanna try to finish as much as I really want to be like day after tomorrow, like download on all of them. It's like I really kind of want to finish reading the comics, so, which is kind of fitting, actually, considering our main topic discussion here. But yeah, because it's like I kind of want to read the book first, but we'll see. We'll see if I can get through it, because it's a lot of pages.
That actually used to be my I had a strict rule about that. About reading books before I see the adaptation. I kind of failed now, but
Yeah, I used to be a real stickler for that too. And then today, actually, I found out that I never knew this. Maybe you guys did. That Kiki's Delivery Service, which is my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, was actually based on a book.
I did not know that.
Well, a friend of mine posted like, "Hey, they retranslated it and are re-releasing it, and here it is. You can go buy it." And I'm like, I never knew that was a book in the first place. So I'm like, I'm gonna get on hold for that at the library.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever it comes in. But yeah, I mean, there's sometimes you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
But we will get into that.
yeah.
So, that's really it for the news. The third episode of The Gold Standard is now out.
Nicely done.
Thank you. You wouldn't even know that we were having technical issues there at the end. And,
Wow, no.
Yeah, Nick had to surgically piece together like the last
Holy
like
cow,
10 minutes of it.
He did awesome.
Good
I
job,
could not,
Nick.
I could not tell.
Yeah, because that was my internet decided that it wanted to be stupid as we were
Oh,
trying.
just like mine did that one night.
Yes.
Oh man. Now that you've said that, because I'm scheduled to be on the podcast in November. Well, and I'm doing the Happiness and Darkness in October, and I'm like, please don't crap out on me, internet. I mean, I hope it doesn't, even when we're doing this, but
well, yes.
Yeah.
Nick is very good about surgically piecing stuff together, though, because actually episode 2 he had to surgically piece it together because Rob had to leave while we were still in the middle of it. So, so he's actually a very good surgeon when it comes to audio. But yeah, episode 3 is now out, available wherever you get podcasts. All Quiet on the Western Front. It's another war movie. We're 3 movies in, and 2 of them have been war movies. So, and there's a lot more war movies.
Given the time period that these awards were given out, I am not surprised, honestly.
Well, yeah, that's true. But the Academy did also set a precedent with that very first one, saying we love war movies. So we love war movies and movies about ourselves, about Hollywood. So within the first 2 years, they managed to kind of set the precedent for that. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was it's interesting. And actually, All Quiet on the Western Front is adapted from a book, but I've never read the book, so I can't speak.
I've read the book. It was a high school requirement for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of those that they require in high school and college classes.
Not mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
not mine either because I haven't read it.
Well, I haven't read it, but it was on a list of books I could choose to read in a history class I took in college. And
okay.
I read Great Gatsby, which I kind of regret, but
I had to read, and I enjoyed it because I can't remember if we saw because we also saw some of the. I think they did like a made-for-TV movie adaptation that had Ernest Borgnine and then
they remade they remade it in the 70s. So
that's what they showed us. And then I think with some of the war scenes, I think they went back to show the one that you guys covered on Golden Standard, just because, hey, more accurate.
Yeah. So there's that, and I will give I'm not going to take a lot of time because there's not really, I don't have a lot to cover, but this past weekend was Virtual PopCon. So now I can't say that my experience is going to be the same for everybody else as their home convention, quote unquote home convention, goes online, because there's different platforms and different ways you can go about doing a convention virtually. But now that I've done it in some form or fashion, it gives me a better idea of what to probably expect going forward for things like Gen Con, which will be online. Although I think Gen Con, I would hope, would be maybe a bit more I don't want to necessarily say better, but I mean, they are a bigger con. They get a bigger budget. They've got more people and resources and the like. So I think all things considering the size that PopCon is, it is I wouldn't say small con. I would say it's like a medium-sized convention, compared to something like Gen Con or New York Comic Con or San Diego or something. Yeah, so I had applied for a press badge for PopCon way before everything hit the fan. Got approved for it. So when it came time for them to switch to the online platform, they just automatically gave me a ticket. Had that a ticket, so it gave me access to all the online stuff. So I just had to make an account to this platform they were using called Tixr. I think that's how you pronounce it, Tixr. And what it did is, I guess it's an online platform that can do all sorts of streaming and different things. So, because like when you logged in, you could see all other sorts of events. But I just had to go to the PopCon stuff, and they had boxes you could go to. So it's like Friday, fan panels here, celebrity panels here. There was a separate link for the film festival they were doing. So they had it broken down. And what's nice is as far as Carl and the rest of them know, because they did do the traditional meet up with Carl and the other PopCon leaders and give feedback right there and then yesterday. So that was nice. And Carl said, as far as he knows, you will have access to those videos in perpetuity. So if you missed something or you want to rewatch something, you can go back and rewatch those videos, which is kind of nice. Because there are some where I came in late. that was a one thing. Like, it's funny going to convention at the convention center, and sometimes you want to be in two places at the same time. That wasn't necessarily a problem with this, because the sheer amount of programming was a lot smaller. Because not everything translates well to just people talking to a camera. But I did find myself like looking at the schedule and be like, oh, the next thing I want to do is not for like 2 hours. I'll go and do some laundry or something. Next thing I know, time's gotten away from me and the meal's half over. Yeah, you can't get distracted by doing laundry if you're at the convention center. So it was just slightly different thing. Bit not being together with my friends, hanging out with the same people I'm used to seeing every year. I did see familiar faces in some panels. The Breakfast Anytime Improv, they did several. They did a panel, and then they supplied short video clips to the PopCon people. So if a panel ended and they needed to fill some time, they could put that up there in the stream, and you could get like a 3-minute, thing of Breakfast Anytime Improv clips, which nice. That was kind of cool. I would have liked a bit more variety as far as panels were concerned, but again, not everything translates well. I don't know what they did as far as trying to get panels and panelists. There were a few panels where I'm like, oh, this is an interesting topic, but the panelists, I don't know if they just weren't comfortable being in front of a camera or what, but
if I had to guess, it would be like, maybe like when you think you're doing a panel and you have an audience and you have that feedback from the crowd, it's a little different than, oh, I'm just talking into my computer and hopefully there's an audience there. I mean, we do it for the podcast, but we're not a convention panel, sort of thing.
Yeah. That's true. There is a certain loss in beef, feeding off of people right there and then. So, although it is nice with the platform they were using, it had a built-in chat feature, so you could just type in your question and it would just go straight to them. So you weren't having to wait till like the end of the panel for them to be like, okay, anybody have any questions? Like, a lot of the panels were just Q&A the entire time. So that was kind of nice. So, and there are some things that they just didn't do at all just because they could not get the technology that they were using just wasn't conducive to what so there was no cosplay contest, which I missed. They weren't able to do the podcasting awards. I do have the list of the winners if anybody cares. We didn't win in the category we submitted for. Colt Cinema Cavalcade did win again, though.
Congrats to them
in their respective category. So that was nice, but I didn't recognize the names of any of the other winners. But there were a lot. I think they had a lot more people submit this year because the window to submit had opened up a lot earlier before the convention. So people had plenty of time to get their submissions together and get them in. But yeah, it was nice to have something instead of me just sitting at home folding laundry going, I wish I was at PopCon. It's better to have that than absolutely nothing at all. And I know that the learning curve for them was pretty steep, especially considering the turnaround time they had from the point where they got word from the governor or whoever. It was like, no events, you're cut off, to them going, okay, well, let's figure out how to do all this online. So I won't begrudge them for that, and they know that they, heaven forbid they have to do this again in the future, that there are things that they would need to do differently. There was a power outage at one point Saturday, I think, because a very nasty storm rolled through and they lost power. So there was nothing streaming for like a half an hour until the power came back on. Which Carl was saying in the feedback panel yesterday. He's like, if we'd been at the convention center, the storm was so bad. He's like, we would have had to move people to the basement of the convention center. That's how bad the storm was. So the fact that their power went out, but they were safe and people were at home safe was actually a good thing, even though it meant they lost, a chunk of time of programming. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see going forward other conventions that are moving online, how they do things, what other platform options are available out there, and figure out how to translate programming that would normally be face-to-face into something that could be done by people in front of a camera, just talking to the camera and not really getting that instant feedback that you get from a live audience. So, and I didn't do any of the I don't know how they did the celebrity stuff. I know that they did celebrity panels. I imagine it was similar to a lot of the other panels where people just type in their questions in the chat for the celebrity, and then they had someone moderating them, and they could pick and choose questions opposed to the celebrity. I know that they were offering one-on-ones that you could buy, like meet and greets. I didn't do that, so I don't know exactly how those worked. Like what sort of time limit you had or that sort of thing. What celebrity guests they were managed to get and keep, they were all voiceover artists. So like anime type programming that I don't watch, so all that was lost on me. So for the most part, but yeah, like I said, I was glad to have something PopCon. And like I said, heaven forbid they have to do something like this in the future. I may see about submitting something, coming up with some idea now that I've seen it in action. I'm like, okay, let's see what we could come up with as far as panel ideas. So, but I'll be interested to compare this to Gen Con in a few weeks to see how they decide to do things versus PopCon. So, and other conventions in the future. I mean, Gen Con's the only other one I'm planning on attending, but I know that there are others out there like San Diego and stuff that are trying to move stuff online. That I'm interested to see the feedback from all that, just to see how the different conventions decide to do things. So,
Yeah,
it can be done. You're not going to get the full convention experience, but you can still get something, so you're not feeling like you're completely missing out on something that you're usually used to doing.
So you have something good to look forward to at least.
Mm-hmm.
But, yep. Well, that's good to hear. And I mean, I'm gonna try to when Fan X's stuff goes up, I'm gonna try to get in on some of that, but see how it goes. But that's good to hear that at least it's doable.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right, let's move on to feedback. So we got some feedback from Shalane. So talking about Labyrinth and other 80s movies. She says she feels like Labyrinth, Neverending Story, and Dark Crystal are very similar in design, color, and texture, which, I mean, Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, those are both Henson. Neverending Story's different company, but yeah, I can say that. It's very 80s, like, fantasy, I guess, feel. It says she understands why people cosplay those characters at Comic-Con. Yeah. And she's like, also Jennifer Connelly's in Spider-Man Homecoming. She's Karen, the suit lady. Which I totally forgot about that.
What is this place? Suit lady, where am I?
You're in the most secure facility on the eastern seaboard. The damage-controlled deep storage vault.
No! Seriously? Oh.
The door will most likely remain closed until morning.
Morning? Hey, suit lady. I kind of feel bad calling you suit lady, you know? I think I should probably give you a name. Like Liz. No. God, that's weird. What about Karen?
You can call me Karen, if you would like.
Hey, Karen, what else can this suit do? What? Maybe we should run that refresher course.
Ricochet web.
Ricochet web. Whoa! Cool.
Splitter web. Web grenade.
Web grenade! Should I tell Liz that I'm Spider-Man?
Who is Liz?
Who's Liz? She's the best. She's awesome. She's just a girl who goes to my school. And, I really want to tell her, but it's kind of weird, you know? Hey, I'm Spider-Man.
What's weird about that?
And what if she's expecting someone like Tony Stark? I mean, imagine how disappointed she'd be when she sees me.
Well, if I were her, I wouldn't be disappointed at all.
Thanks, Karen. It's really nice to have somebody to talk to. Hey, how long we been here anyways?
37 minutes.
What? 37 minutes? That's insane! Cannot take this anymore. I gotta get out of here.
Now every time I watch Spider-Man Homecoming, I'll be like, no, Karen, you're not Karen, you're Sarah. Mm-hmm. She's also married to Paul Bettany. And then Shalane said that she heard there might be a stage version on Broadway of Labyrinth, which I think I remember hearing a vague rumor about that at some point, and then it died off. I think that would be awesome. I'd be really interested to see how they make that work, though.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
But I mean, if you can translate The Lion King to Broadway, then why not?
That is true. It's like they could do it. I mean, they did Lion King. They have cats, for crying out loud.
Well, yes, that is true. So you may have to bend people's expectations, maybe a little. I don't know.
Well,
I'll let them figure it out. That's why the Broadway people get paid the big bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. They're supposed to be creative and figure out ways to do these things.
Yes, exactly. She said some other 80s movies that she thinks are kind of scary, creepy, and dark are The Secret of NIMH, which I've never seen. The Black Cauldron, The Land Before Time, yes, and All Dogs Go to Heaven, yes. If you've not been traumatized by either Littlefoot's mother dying or Charlie dying in All Dogs Go to Heaven, you weren't a child of the 80s. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I'm a child of the 90s, and I've been traumatized by both.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I can remember.
I got scared by Land Before Time, but I liked that movie. Even when I was a little kid, I was traumatized by it, but I kept watching it. Unlike I was traumatized by E.T., and I still don't want to watch it. So there's a difference there.
Yeah.
But yes.
True. And we were talking about the possibility of an elaborate sequel and whether that's something we actually want or not, especially after all this time. And Shalane mentions that sometimes sequels hit, sometimes they miss, especially if it's been a while since the original property has come out. And she mentions things like Independence Day, the sequel to It, didn't do so well. But things like Mary Poppins Returns and Finding Dory actually turned out pretty good, which I would agree.
Mm-hmm. I remember being really against when they announced the sequel to Mary Poppins. I was like, no, but I really did enjoy it when I went to go see it. Oh, I changed my tune apparently.
Well, if you're open to having your mind changed, then that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then we've got a comment from Nick. And he says, "Fantastic episode, ladies. As a Hensonian, I loved your review." And he calls that me specifically. He says, "Rachel, impeccable pronunciation of Morricone and Leone. As an Italian, color me impressed, as many non-Italians have trouble pronouncing our last names correctly." Thank you, Nick. As I commented back, I did take a music for film class in college, and Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone's partnership was brought up because it's kind of up there when you talk director composer relationships. But then I also took French for the longest time. It and Italian have similar Latin roots, so that's it for feedback.
We love reading, but sometimes it's hard to find time to physically sit down with a book, which is why the Five-ish Fangirls has proudly partnered with Audible. Audible is a leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs. Whatever makes you squee, there's a perfect listen for you. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals. Whether you're adventuring through time and space, running from dinosaurs, or capturing ghosts, with the free app, audiobooks go where you go. You can download titles and listen offline, anytime, anywhere. Even if you switch devices, you'll never lose your place. And right now, Five-ish Fangirls listeners can sign up for a free 30-day trial by going to audibletrial.com/5ishfangirls. That's 30 days to check out not only their huge collection of audiobooks, but also podcasts, guided wellness programs, theatrical performances, A-list comedy, and exclusive Audible originals you won't find anywhere else. So continue the joy of reading with Audible. Don't see a title that trips your trigger one month? No problem. Your credit will roll over to the next month, and you can quit anytime and keep the books you've acquired forever. For more details and to sign up for your free 30-day trial, visit audibletrial.com/5ishfangirls. That's audibletrial.com/5ishfangirls. And now, back to the podcast.
Moving on to this week's main topic. So we're gonna get a little. We're gonna have our soapboxes on the ready, I think.
Yeah. Well,
maybe. Probably.
Hopefully, it won't get too heated.
Yeah.
This has a potential to be a very fun topic as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that I think we've mentioned doing for off and on for a while, and we're finally gonna
And we might have had little mini tangents in some episodes, and then we're just like, we need to put a pin in this and say this for an episode. Well,
yes,
ladies and gentlemen,
pin is being removed.
The episode. Yes.
So we're going to be talking about adaptations, specifically book to film for the most part, adaptations, although we have one kind of exception to film, but for the most part, we're talking book to screen adaptations. And to, I think, start this is we are loose parameters that we put in place for this is any movie that, or movie feature length, I guess, production that was created based on a previously published book and or novel, whatever you want to call it. So things like, and we're talking books. We're not talking things like comic books, because that's its whole other thing.
Yeah, we'd be here all day if we included comic books.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna be here a while as it is.
Yeah.
We had to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah.
And also that we feel most of us haven't really read too many comic books, so we can't really have a good.
That too. Yeah, and I think for
opinion.
the most part, our list are, because we made a list of the good, the meh, and the ugly.
Yeah, originally was the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it was like,
because some are not necessarily bad.
Bad's kind of a strong word.
Yeah.
So it's like you get your meh, where it's like you could maybe sway us one way or the other with a good argument. So
right.
Yeah. Or they're ones that like we enjoy, but it's like, yeah, this, as far as an adaptation goes, could have been better.
And we didn't want to have you guys think that we were sitting down and to review the spaghetti western, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, that too.
Well, yes, that too.
Yeah.
We were yeah. So anyway, so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so those are our loose parameters that we're going with, and then we also tried to keep it to stuff where we've seen the adaptation and read the book, so we can actually give a accurate, somewhat accurate,
or in at least two examples one example that I suggested. I tried to read the book.
Yeah.
I will get to that.
There's a lot. I'll have the link in our notes. I'll put it in the show notes. I started out when Googling, just trying to figure out what sort of parameters we should be using when we're, definition of what we're considering a book adaptation. And I came across this list that's supposed to be the 40 best film adaptations of all time, and I recognize all of the movies, but I have not read the books for 99% of them. Like The Godfather, based on novel, it's supposed to be really, really a really good adaptation. I have not read the book. I have not seen any of The Godfather yet. I have to for the Golden Standard, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to watch The Godfather. So, but I'm still not gonna read the book. So
it's a bit of it's a dense one. I've not read it either, but I've
There's some that I've
Uh-huh.
tried to read and just like I tried to read Gone with the Wind at one point. Sorry.
There are that's the thing with books, and this is a bit of a tangent, but if you're gonna sit down, reading a book is a commitment. If you're gonna read a book, especially a big huge one like Gone with the Wind or The Godfather or one of those door stoppers, and if you're not going to enjoy it, you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if people are say, oh, it's a classic, you have to read it. If you don't like it, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you should not feel ashamed if you do start and it's just like, I can't finish this. I need to DNF this book, which means did not finish.
Yeah.
That's fine. You should not feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Just know that, I tried. It's not for me.
There's a famous librarian named Nancy Pearl, and her rule of thumb is you give it 50 pages. If you're not hooked in by 50 pages, then you do not have to finish it. If you're over 50, subtract a page from 50 for every year you are over 50. If you're over 100, you can dismiss a book by its blurb alone. I'm like, I'm holding on to that one.
Mm-hmm. So I do admit I did enjoy Outliner, but it took me 3 tries to get past a certain point because she's so. I mean, I was interested, but it was getting so dense.
Yeah.
That it's just like, oh,
it's almost like a dissertation.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too, is like we've left off things
TV
where
series,
especially where the TV series has surpassed the books, like Game of Thrones and Outlander, where they don't match up anymore. So
right, or in Outlander's case, for the most part, yes, but then they kind of went left and then back, and it's still good.
We discussed Game of Thrones more than we need to anyway. So
we're gonna highlight a few things that we haven't discussed before. Although we are just as a special mention, because people will bring it up if we don't say anything, we do recognize, Harry Potter was a book series and to a movie, but because each book was done by like
a movie,
it was its own movie. It's a lot of
its own unique adaptation because there's a lot of different directors.
There's a lot of different directors. They changed out screenwriters at least once. Crew and so we're kind of like that seems to be that ought to be its own topic, because we could sit here and dissect every movie and every book, and we wouldn't get to these others. So yes, we will cover Harry Potter, just not here because it would take up the whole podcast.
We are not ignoring the wizard-shaped elephant in that room.
And we wanted to talk about some others, so we'll get there. Again, we're going to stick a pin in it and get to it. But anyway.
I guess I don't know how exactly to approach this, because like everything that I've read, and even my own opinion, is everybody's got their own idea of what they consider a good adaptation, and even just the idea of adapting a written work into a film is a long. I mean, it's gone back since the days of early film. I was reading in Wikipedia that one of the first adaptations, or at least recorded adaptations, is this. It doesn't say who. I don't know if this person was a director or what, but they attempted a literal adaptation of a novel called McTeague, and the film is called Greed, but it's a 1924 silent film based on an 1899 novel, and because they tried to do it literally, the film at first when it was first finished was 9.5 hours long.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Basically, they did a visual version of an audiobook.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
cut it down to 4 hours. And
Still pretty lengthy.
Yes. And then it got cut again without the director's input to 2 hours. And at that point, the film was mostly incoherent.
Well, yeah, when you go from 9 hours to 2 hours.
Yeah.
You're cutting out 7 hours of info.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, and that's the thing to remember is a book is a certain type of medium. A film or a TV show or anything like that is a different type of medium. So whenever you sit there and you're watching a movie and you're like, but they cut out blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, that would have been nice. But as long as they get the spirit of the story in there, and you're going for the spirit rather than the letter of the story. And as long as you're close enough, and it feels like you got a good feel for it, then I think you're probably good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, films have to appeal to a film audience is different than a book audience as well. It's because people who read books, who will like sit down and actually read a book or even listen to an audiobook, are it's different. You have different expectations reading a book than you do sitting down and watching a movie or going to the movie theater to watch a movie. And it's kind of weird because when I was into Harry Potter, like really into it in high school, and that was when the movies were coming out and stuff, and my dad does not like to sit down and read. He just doesn't. He's like, well, they made a movie of it. Why should I read it? And I'm like, so I like sat down and I tried to watch the movie as if I'd never read the book. And I'm like, I don't think you would understand half of what's going on. And so you kind of have to recognize that they have to speak to people that are that haven't read the book. And like when we recently watched Artemis Fowl, which kind of spurred on this idea for the topic, is me and Jared's mom and dad. Jared's dad had not read the book, and I just kind of asked him, I was like, well, did you understand what was going on? He was like, not really. And I'm like, well, then they failed.
Yeah.
On many levels, and funnily enough, that is on our list of ugly film adaptations, because even YouTube reviewers that I've seen talk about Artemis Fowl that have said, I've never read the book, I know nothing about the book, and then they're like, I don't even know what this movie was supposed to be about, and then later they go and look up what the book is about, and he's a criminal mastermind, and he's a kid, and he's a genius, and he's trying to con the fairies of the in fairyland or whatever, and they're like, wait a minute, that was not that movie, I want to see that movie, or read that book. That story sounds amazing.
Which version of the book did they read when they made this?
You have to look up the pitch meeting for Artemis Fowl, because he's like, because the guy, the screenwriter dude is like, well, there was a lot of words, and I Wikipedia'd it. I got the general idea when I was writing this screenplay. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's how it went down.
Yeah.
First, I watched it for the first time yesterday, and I was like, I've read the books, and I was like, I was confused about okay, what exactly is gonna be happening?
I know, because it's been a while since I read the books, and I was just trying to think, okay, I remember this, but I don't remember that. I remember Commander Root, and Dame Judi Dench, you are no Commander Root. I'm sorry, but you were horribly miscast.
Yeah.
That was my biggest complaint. The rest of it, I'm just kind of like,
I'm currently reading the books. I'm on the third book as we.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I was saying in our channel, they got pretty much none of the personalities correct.
No, I mean Artemis he's just kind of this scared little kid who, by the way, he lives in Ireland. Did you know he lives in Ireland? Ireland is a magical place. Ireland is magical because Artemis Fowl lives there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't begrudge any filmmaker, scriptwriter, director, whatever, when somebody decides to adapt something, especially if it's something really, really well known and beloved. Something like Harry Potter or even the Lord of the Rings or something like that, where it's got a devout following, fans of the books, of the source material. It's like you want to have those people show up, but at the same time you can't have them be the only people that show up to the movie theater, because then your movie's not necessarily going to make a lot of money.
Right.
You need to be able to get the people that just go to the movies just because they enjoy going to the movies and they want to see something interesting that tells an interesting story. So it's like there's a very fine line of catering to the diehard fans and your casual moviegoer who may not know the source material. Your casual moviegoer still needs to be able to follow what's going on. They need to be able to tell, at least the basic plot. Who's your good guy? Who's your bad guy? Where's the set? The major beats of that story. Is there a theme that goes throughout the story? Whether it's love or bravery or whatever. You can
what the goal is.
What the goal of the story? What was the original story trying to tell its audience? And you get something like Artemis Fowl, where people who have read the source material spend their entire time going, well, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And then you have people that haven't read it and they have no idea what's going on. They can't even follow the story. Then you did it wrong.
Yes. And well, let's go to Lord of the Rings, because that one I think is an excellent example of getting it balanced between being true to the book and making a good movie.
Yes.
And if you've read Lord of the Rings, which I am currently in the middle of, it is dense. It is something that you really have to work at. But if you understand the story and you understand the characters and you understand what Tolkien was trying to do, then you enjoy it. Someone who only wants to go see a movie does not want to have a little sidetrack and go to the house of Tom Bombadil. This, he's basically a hippie.
Right.
It has no bearing on the rest of the story at all.
Right.
And he never shows up again, really. And it would just be a tangent. And then also at the end because I remember the first time I read Lord of the Rings, and I get to the end of, because the way it's split up after the Fellowship is there's two books in Two Towers and 2 books in Return of the King. One book deals with Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and that side. The other part deals with Frodo and Sam and the Ring. Same with Return of the King. So Return of the King, you have the first half of it is the armies fighting, Battle of Pelennor Fields, and and all of that stuff, and then all that big stuff's going on. Then you get to the second half, and that is Frodo and Sam. By chapter 3 of the second half, they've gone to Mount Doom. They've thrown the ring in the thing, but you still have this big chunk of text left. And you're like, and not counting the appendices, you're like, well, what's going to happen here? Well, basically, you find out that Saruman and Wormtongue have gone to, destroy the Shire. And you're like, but the whole point of this story was Frodo and Sam going to Mount Doom to destroy the ring, or the forces of good defeating the forces of evil. And now you have this little kind of epilogue, and it's like, well, maybe that works for the book. And even as I was reading the book, I was confused first time reading it. But I kept reading it because I was like, okay, well, we want to see him get home. I was like, I want to see him get home and get home. I don't want them to have to fight another battle with all this. I mean, now they know how, they have all this experience. They know what to do. But can you imagine if they tried to put that in the movie? I mean, people
Ugh.
complain about all the multiple endings of Return of the King.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't begrudge them that, because I feel like
No.
it's the end of the trilogy, because it's one big movie
Mhm.
split into
There's
3 parts.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they filmed it the way they did. I mean,
Yeah.
they filmed
It's
essentially
all-
movies as one
Mhm.
big movie, and just
Because that's how the book is. 'Cause
Right.
the original,
Right.
yeah.
The world is changed. Much that once was is lost. For none now live who remember it. History became legend. Legend became myth. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost.
It has now been found. Is it secret? Is it safe? This is the One Ring, forged by the Dark Lord Sauron. Sauron needs only this ring to cover all the lands of a second darkness. He's seeking it all. His thought is bent on it.
No one knows it's here, do they? Do they, Gandalf?
Middle-earth stands upon the brink of destruction.
The weapon of the enemy is a gift. Let us use it against him. You cannot wield it. None of us can.
The ring must be destroyed. It was made in the fires of Mount Doom. Only there can it be unmade.
What orders from Mordor, my lord? What does the Eye command?
We have work to do. They are coming.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There is evil there that does not sleep. The great Eye is ever watchful.
and I think and because Peter Jackson and the rest of his team, they did a really good job in pre-production.
Yes.
Yeah, if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, you know, my beloved 12-disc extended edition box set.
Yes, yes.
I will keep forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, I just watched them like a couple months ago.
They literally went through Tolkien's story and wrote down what they thought the most important scenes were and put them in an order that would make sense in a film. So that you had it told the story. It still told the same story, but in a way that kept the audience engaged. You could have action scenes, but then maybe some moments that are a bit more low key, to give your people, your audience a chance to relax a little, so they're not going into cardiac arrest. Heaven knows I always need a breather after any encounter with Shelob because I hate spiders.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I need a break.
Yep.
So,
you can't have constant action because eventually it gets boring. But yes, you need to.
Yeah.
You need to have give us a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is it is action adventure, but it's a romance too. I mean, romance with Aragorn and
Arwen.
Yep.
It's and
that's an important part. And Arwen actually doesn't appear that much in the actual book. They had to pull her from the appendices.
Yes. That was an example of the appendices done well, as opposed to what happened with the poor Hobbit.
Yes. Yeah. My dad loved the Lord of the Rings series of movies. He enjoyed the books. The Return of the King was his favorite book. He quibbled a little bit with one of the ending scenes, but he understood that, yes, for the movie, that made sense, but I've always got the book I can go back to. He enjoyed them. The Hobbit, on the other hand, he really didn't care for it. He's just like, give me Give me my extended edition Lord of the Rings. I'm a happy camper.
Which,
Hobbit,
if
not
you,
so much.
if you look into like how the Hobbit, because it was in development hell for so long.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro was attached to it at one point. Then the studio pushed him out. Just all this behind the scenes executive meddling going on. Like the love triangle in there was direct result of studio meddling. And it was just so sad that it's like we could have ended up with something really, really good, except the studio wanted it to be a big cash grab, like big success, like Lord of the Rings.
They could catch lightning in a bottle twice.
No, and they really couldn't. And what they needed to do was, I mean, the best scene in that whole trilogy of whatever the heck that was is the scene where the dwarves are in Bag End. And they are, telling Bilbo, singing about, the under the mountain, and or they're trashing his place and invading his home.
Who wants an ale? There you go. Here you go.
Excuse me, that is a doily, not a dishcloth.
But it's full of holes.
It's supposed to look like that. It's crochet.
Oh, what a wonderful game it is, too. If you've got the balls for it.
Masticate these claws!
My dear Bilbo, what on earth is the matter?
What's the matter? I'm surrounded by dwarves. What are they doing here?
Oh, they're quite a merry gathering. Once you get used to them.
I don't want to get used to them. The state of my kitchen. There's mud, trodden the carpet. They pillaged the pantry. I'm not even going to tell you what they've done in the bathroom. They've all but destroyed the plumbing. I don't understand what they're doing in my house.
Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what should I do with my plate?
Here you go, Worry. Give it to me.
Excuse me, that's my mother's breastfeeding bottle. It's over 100 years old. And can you not do that? You'll blunt them.
Ooh, do you hear that, lads? He says we'll blunt the knives.
Blunt the knives, bend the forks,
Smash the bottles and burn the corks. Chip the glasses and crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Tuck the cloth, twiddle the hat. Leave the hoods on the bedroom mat. Pour the milk on the pantry floor. Splash the wine on every door. Dump across the boiling bowl. Down the top of the pumpkin bowl. When you're finished, the send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
So good, like that part I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great, and then as it goes on and drags on and drags on, I'm just like, what have you done to my poor hobbit? I mean casting Martin Freeman was genius. Richard Armitage as Thorin is genius.
Yes.
And it just like the dwarves just kind of get shunted to the side as it goes on, and I'm like,
And then Benedict Cumberbatch as the voice of Smaug. Yeah. I mean, holy cow!
Like you had the cast of dreams here, guys, and you squandered it.
I remember feeling like as soon as I heard that it was going to be a trilogy, I'm like, the book's not long enough for it.
That's what I was saying too.
Yeah.
Originally, it was only going to be 2 movies. It was There and Back. No, it was An Unexpected Journey and There and Back Again. Then they said, okay, it's going to be 3 movies because I've got enough footage for 3 movies. I'm like, you do? And it was like, so the middle one's going to be Desolation of Smaug. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then they changed There and Back Again to Battle of 5 Armies. I'm like, no, you got to keep There and Back Again because that's the name. That's what Bilbo calls his book when he writes it.
Right. Where under the preface does it say Battle of 5 Armies?
Yeah.
But that's what the 3rd movie ended up being, and I'm just like, ugh. And
great.
That movie was so boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a battle, but it's so boring.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking in the books, the battle isn't long enough for a movie. Like what's gonna happen?
No, and it's and like I said, we put it in the meh category because that first movie about how the first movie is actually pretty good.
Yes.
And then they just keep keep scraping the butter over too much bread.
Yeah.
I mean, very thin.
I like the Hobbit movies, but I like them for just the sheer entertainment value of them.
Yeah.
Unlike the Lord of the Rings, where like those movies changed my life because of it's like the Hobbit. It's fun. There's some great casting. It's fabulous to see essentially a super long advertisement for New Zealand again.
Yes.
I really, every time I watch anything that's set in the Tolkien universe, it's like, I want to go to New Zealand. So, they've got that going for them. And you're right, Chrissy, Martin Freeman as a younger Bilbo is fabulous casting, and then that's something that really comes down to that could make or break an adaptation. It's not necessarily something that's has to do with the actual story, but getting your characters right. You can take some creative liberties with physical features and stuff, because sometimes some things just don't make sense, where you just can't get them to work. I know, like I said, we're not really going to touch on Harry Potter, but I know they tried to shoot Emma Watson with prosthetic teeth to give her the buck teeth, and it just screwed up her speaking voice. So they just tossed it. And in the grand scheme of things, not that big a deal. But if you can get a person who can catch on to the traits that you associate with a character, if you've read The Hobbit and you know those personality traits that make Bilbo Baggins, and the fact that Martin was able to tap into those is just, it's like, yes, that's what I need. That's what you need to be at least on the right footing when it comes to adapting something that people up to that point have been reading and building in their heads. Some authors are really good about giving a lot of physical descriptions. Some don't, and therefore your readers kind of have to build the person in their head. Same thing with the physical surroundings too. Some in the case of the the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, it hadn't really been done before. There was a cartoon there that doesn't count. But
there's a reason that they made the Lord of the Rings movies when they did, when the technology finally caught up to what the story required.
But and people had an idea of what they thought Middle Earth looked like, but at the same time, Peter Jackson could have been like, well, this is my interpretation, and he did that to a point, but he also relied on what's his name, Alan Lee, and the other guy. I can never remember the other guy's name. The two guys that have been doing the cover art.
John Howe.
Yeah, John Howe.
It's Rachel, you're like me. I can never remember John Howe either.
Sorry, John. Alan Lee, yes, but John Howe, I don't know why I struggle remembering his name. But those two guys have been doing official Tolkien artwork for decades. So when Peter was in pre-production and he's like, I don't want to try to have myself and What a Workshop come up with it. It's so much easier to go to the guys who have kind of established what people expect Middle Earth to look like, and use that as their basis for creating things like Rivendell, and
well, because that's what people are going to want to see on the
Right.
big screen. I mean, you've
Yeah.
been looking at these illustrations, these calendars, these posters, these, whatever's been printed, and they're like, I want to go to Middle Earth. That's what I want to see. And when the first stills started coming out of the Lord of the Rings, like Hobbiton and Bag End, and I'm like, that's Bilbo's door. I mean, that's what it looks like on the book cover. I want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
But yeah, so yeah, Lord of the Rings firmly in the good category. Hobbit
Yep.
kind of mixed. So it's, and that's a tale unto itself.
Yeah. I definitely watched The Lord of the Rings more than I watched The Hobbit, and not just because The Lord of the Rings came out before The Hobbit.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't want to be disappointed again, even though there are parts of Unexpected Journey that I absolutely love. But kind of in that same vein, again, because you were talking about, I think, Brittany, you mentioned that, Battle of Five Armies. Well, first off, Bilbo's like knocked out for the whole thing, so you don't get to see it. But in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that was another one that has a big battle at the end. So, because in the book, and like the book says, the battle was over before it was begun, or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but they, that was one battle that they adapted that was stretched out that actually worked well. And I think it's because Rachel, you were mentioning, authors who maybe they don't do a lot of description in the Chronicles of Narnia. C.S. Lewis doesn't give a whole lot of blow by blow account. It's just more, here's the general idea, here's what the characters are like, here's what's important. It's the bare bones of the story,
right?
And then the reader just kind of fills in everything out. So you're like, well,
here's
how do you
the battle. You can make it as however long or short as you want it.
Yeah. And as I was like, well, how do you do a big, quote unquote, epic movie about that? Well, I think that the trilogy that they did, I want to say not too long ago, but I looked down like, oh, that came out in 2005. Holy crap.
Yeah. Whoa, time flies.
Doesn't seem like it's been that long.
That one's almost old enough to drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, it's one of my, it's another one of my favorite ones, because I don't know, I've always loved the Chronicles of Narnia, and they have had animated ones, but this one, it felt like it was more like someone actually took it seriously, that it's not just a kid's book. Like, yes, it is meant for children. It was written for children, but as you get into the deeper themes and the deeper meanings and the deeper and making the characters not just stand-ins for chess pieces, basically, like, piece goes here, blah blah blah. But no, it's like these kids, they're brothers and sisters, they're together in a really difficult time. It's World War II, and they're being sent away to the country for their protection, because the Blitz is going on. But they want to be with their family. They miss their dad, they miss their mom, and they're in this strange place. And they want to, kind of giving them some more depth to it. And it sometimes I wonder, because this one was put out by Disney, and Disney kind of has a weird relationship with book to movie adaptations. Like, sometimes they just get it totally wrong and totally just bad, but sometimes they make changes that maybe weren't in the book, but it actually enhances the story quite a bit. And I feel like that's what they did with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, they did Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Prince Caspian I still like, but it's not quite as good. Voyage of the Dawn Treader was 20th Century Fox, because shenanigans, which take too long to get into here. And it was fine, but I feel like it's the weakest of the three of that set. And the problem with Narnia, when you say, oh, you're doing a movie series around the Chronicles of Narnia, it doesn't really have a central set of characters, because as it goes on, the kids age out. It even in the story says, oh, you're too old to be in Narnia anymore. You've got to, go live your life in your world. And so, they age out, but then new ones come in. So it's like, how do you have a central cast? I mean, I know they're going to try to do a Narnia TV series on Netflix, I think. Netflix or Amazon. I always forget which one it is. So I guess they could probably do it there. But yeah, those other two were fine, but Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is by far the best. And I think that one is because it's an easier story to adapt, because it feels like it's just one contained story rather than a whole series, if that makes sense. Because yeah, those same four kids come back in Prince Caspian, but you kind of have to, they spend a lot more time in Narnia, and they have to know about the politics and the backstory, and you don't see the Pevensey kids grow up and become the adult kings and queens, because it's just in the next chapter, and they grew up and they were out riding for the stag, and they wandered into the forest and back out the wardrobe, and they're kids again.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah, timey wimey, and you go through reverse puberty. You can't think about it too hard. So yeah, I don't know. That those are kind of my thoughts on those on that series. I don't know if you guys, if you've watched them recently or watched them or read the books, or what are your thoughts on those
It's
ones?
been a long time for me, so.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading the series. I watched the first movie and enjoyed it. Second one, it was good. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. Third one, I just kind of,
I don't think I even.
If I get around to seeing the third one, I get around to seeing it, but it wasn't really something that was high up on my to-watch list.
Yeah, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on DVD, and I'm like, oh, I like seeing you kids again, but
Yeah.
It just kind of fizzled out at the end, which was sad, because I want to see an adaptation, a good adaptation of Narnia, which hopefully we'll be getting soon.
Yeah, I mean, they don't get me wrong. They had a pretty decent start.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Kind of.
It's kind of like they didn't really have a clear goal of what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. So it was a little tricky.
Or they were trying to do the marathon, and they're just like, okay, we're gonna sprint, and then they haven't even reached the halfway point, and it's like, oh boy, we need to stop. We need to take a rest. Happy note.
Yep.
Maybe they tried harder with the Lion of Witch Road, because that's the more well known of the book series. Like, out of all the 7 books, anyone, when they say Narnia, they think of this one.
Right. True. They don't think of the other ones, like the Silver Chair.
Even before the movies came out, like, it's been like, oh, this one.
Well, and even because when I read the book series, I love The Horse and His Boy. I love it. The Pevensey kids, they're adult royals by now. They're background characters. They're not really in it. So it's like, I don't know how you'd be able to do that story, because the main characters are not. That's the only one that they're main characters in. But I love that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, Narnia is a tricky one to adapt for story reasons, not necessarily, but what Lord of the Rings had problems with for years was, how do you create this world? Narnia, it's like the world is pretty straightforward. It's the way that the story is structured that you've got to figure out.
Yeah.
And that gets tricky.
I do like to say that when you're, especially, like your big fantasy stories, like your Lord of the Rings or your stuff by C.S. Lewis, that I've always appreciated the when we get movie adaptations, that when you have like different languages and stuff, that how that stuff is supposed to sound.
Oh yeah.
Like, what is this word? Oh, okay. So,
well, help that Tolkien was a linguist first.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true. So,
and it makes so much sense.
Yeah. So I will grant them that. And there's not necessarily anything wrong when you read the Chronicles of Narnia whenever they get to Aslan and you hear Liam Neeson in your head. So.
Ah, yes. Again, speaking of dream casting, holy cow.
Yeah.
Edmund!
Whoa, horsey!
My name is Philip.
Oh, sorry.
The witch has demanded a meeting with Aslan. She's on her way here.
The Queen of Narnia! Empress of the Moon Island! You belong here. We've done no wrong.
You have a traitor in your midst, Aslan?
His offense was not against you.
Have you forgotten the laws upon which Narnia was built?
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Then you'll remember well that every traitor belongs to me. His blood is my property.
Try and take him then.
Do you really think that mere force will deny me my right? Little king. Aslan knows that unless I have blood as the law demands, all of Narnia will be overturned and perish in fire and water. That boy will die on the stone table. As is tradition. You dare not refuse me.
Enough. I shall talk with you alone.
Yes. But yeah, I'm just like that's my one request for Netflix or Amazon, whoever's doing Narnia, because I keep forgetting who it is. Please get Liam Neeson back for Aslan, because he's amazing.
It's just a voice. It's easy enough.
Yeah, just get him in the booth and read the lines. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I'm just going down our list here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's say if we want to continue talking about dream casting, our one not so much movie, but it's I consider it just one super long movie, kind of like Lord of the Rings, even though technically it was a miniseries.
Yes.
But since the day that it got dropped on Amazon Prime, I've been like, this is how you do an adaptation.
Yes.
Good Omens. Based on, of course, Good Omens, the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes, daughter of Witch, by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, which we got last year on Amazon Prime. Oh, talk about dream casting. I mean, it helps that you had Neil Gaiman working on this adaptation every step of the way. But again, it was kind of one of those ones that was been in development hell because they could not get the pieces to work to adapt it. But you know, the stars finally aligned, and on Terry's deathbed, he made Neil promise that they were going to finally adapt it into a live action. So Neil hunkered down. He's like, okay, let's figure this out. And that's exactly what he did. He took this book that was this wacky story and figured out a way to break it out in a way, in a length, in chunks that works. And you know, it's not a bank for bank adaptation.
Oh no.
I mean, you've got your major plot points. You know, you got the baby swap, and you've got, you know, Aziraphale and Crowley helping raise the wrong child.
Yeah.
You know.
And I have to tell it, the baby swapping scene makes so much more sense.
Yes. You know, this is one of those things where having the adaptation actually helps tell the story better, because the baby swap is so much more understandable. You know, and
because I can remember with a piece of paper trying to Well, basically my notes kind of looked like the family circus Jeffy follow trail and PJ.
Yeah. Oh, but then you've got stuff that was taken out of the book. Some of them were supposed to have siblings. They took those out. We don't get the other 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that try to follow our 4 horsemen and get picked off one by one before they get to Tatfield. So you got that kind of stuff taken out, but at the same time you've got stuff added in, like that wonderful 20-minute opening in episode 3 where we get a beautiful montage of Crowley and Aziraphale's relationship throughout history and their encounters with each other. That's not part of the book, but it's they need
it adds to it.
It adds to it. It's something that Neil realized that this would really help sell the fact that these two have known each other and have been working together, even on the sly for 6,000 years, and shows just how long and deep their relationship.
Oysters, oranges.
Some grapes, please.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous.
I thought you said we'd be inconspicuous here. Blending among crowds. Well, that was the idea.
Hang on, wait there.
This isn't one of Shakespeare's gloomy ones, is it? Oh, no wonder nobody's here.
It's him. Prithee, gentles, might I request a small favour? Could you, in your role as the audience, give us more to work with?
You mean like when the ghost of his father came on and I said, "He's behind you"?
Just so. That was jolly helpful. Made everyone on stage feel appreciated. A bit more of that. Good, Master Burbage, please speak the lines trippingly.
I am wasting my time up here.
No, you're very good. I love all the talking.
And what does your friend think?
Oh, he's not my friend. We've never met before. We don't know each other.
I think you should get on with the play.
Yes, Burbage, please.
From the top.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
To be! I mean, not to be. Come on, Howard. Buck up.
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer.
He's very good, isn't he?
Age does not wither, nor custom stay of his infinite variety.
By opposing, end them.
I like that.
Basically, we're really supposed to hate each other, but we actually like each other.
Exactly.
Well, and it helps that Neil Gaiman has had experience writing for TV too.
Yes.
So he can understand both the book side of it and, well, this is what's going to work in a visual medium. So.
Yes, that is true as well. So, but yeah, and then your casting, just I mean, you can't beat the combination of David Tennant and Michael Sheen. I mean, those two are like friendship goals now.
Basically, they're like Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen.
Exactly.
I was going to say, it's like they're the younger version of those guys.
Exactly. Exactly. It's just, it's crazy. Just, absolutely great casting, of course, at the time, when we started getting announcements when they're like, yeah, we're finally doing this, and I've got my book, copy of Good Omens, like, oh boy, and they're like David Tennant, I'm like, yay, and they're like Michael Sheen, and I'm like, who? And now I'm like,
oh yes,
Michael
please.
Sheen been my entire life.
Yes.
But yeah, no, from like the first minute of the first episode, I'm like, yes, this is how you do an adaptation without necessarily being, beat for beat, just trying to replicate what's on the pages. Like, this is how you play with it, massage it, make little little changes and take out certain things and put in certain things, and they did a really good job that, you know, those who have not read the books are able to follow exactly what's going on in the story. But at the same time, those of us that have read the book, especially as diehards that have read the book, they put little Easter eggs in there that you will only get if you read the book. It's a nice little thank you to all of the diehards who have got their battered copies. You know,
yes,
the pages was born from turning them over and over and over again. I was like, you know, that's how you do an adaptation.
Or let me go back to my favorite scene numerous times.
I'm one of the ones that didn't read the book until after I watched it, and I'm on that that side of the spectrum, I guess.
Yeah.
And like you said, I watched it, I totally understood what was going on, and then when I read the book, and then I went back to, because I watched that series. Don't know how many times this past year. I have it on Amazon Prime. I bought it on Blu-ray. I have a physical copy of it. Too.
Yeah.
and I didn't have to read the book, but
you wanted to.
Yeah, and then when I saw it after, I saw it wasn't something I did. I didn't understand. It wasn't I didn't understand. Okay, I get that. I get that the reason for that even more now. The book just added to my enjoyment of the show. Specifically in the show, Queen pops up all the time.
Yes.
And
just from that one little couple flyaway mentions of Carly in the car he's in, every single time he plays, it's Queen.
And it says in his book, every if you leave a cassette in a car for a fortnight, it eventually comes into the best of Queen. I was like, oh, that's cool. And it made me laugh because I used to have a CD, my Best of Queen CD used to stay in my car. I'm like, I get it.
Well, another adaptation that really had a lot, that the author had a lot of say over, and a lot of control. Well, I don't want to say control, but he was heavily involved with Holes, which is based on the book Holes by Louis Sachar. I think I'm saying his name right. I've been reading his books for years and never really know how to pronounce the last name. But I actually saw the movie first and then read the book, and that is probably, that movie is about as close to a scene for scene adaptation that I think you will ever get, and it works for this particular story. Because because it's the mystery, it's the whole thing with Stanley's family, that they're cursed and going to the camp and digging the holes, but then you have the flashbacks to when Camp Green Lake was actually a green lake, or a nice place to be, a nice little town, and so the history, all of the different threads weaving themselves together. It's a fascinating book. And it's a fascinating movie just of how well they managed to make all of these things work. And you wouldn't think that they'd get it, but dang, they do, and it's beautiful, honestly. I mean, that book, the book is a Newbery winner, back when that actually meant something. But then the movie is just right up there with it. I don't know if it won any awards or anything, but I mean, if you, for some reason, they were so faithful to it when they were adapting it for the movie, and like I said, Louis Sachar was involved heavily. I think he even has a writing credit on the screenplay, if I remember correctly. But it's all and there's nothing missing, there's nothing confusing, there's nothing. I think there might be a few scenes that are that were cut out, but other than that, it's darn near perfect adaptation of the book. So if you haven't seen Holes, or if you haven't seen it in a while, go watch it. It's one of my favorites. Which is weird because,
very well done.
Yeah. And it stars Shia LaBeouf before Shia LaBeouf went weird.
That too.
Same with all same with all these Disney stars. I'm just like, oh gosh, he was Disney Channel, but anyway, but yeah, it's a great movie, and I can't sing its praises enough. Like I do, just sit here and be like, go read the book. If you've read the book, you've seen the movie. If you've seen the movie, you've read the book. But do both anyway, because it's just a fun experience to realize I remember seeing that in the movie, or I remember reading that in the book, and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I've never read the book, and like I've seen Holes like actually pretty late. Like I didn't see it until like actually probably a few years ago. I remember liking it. I knew it was based off a book, but I haven't had a chance to actually sit down and read it. So but that got me excited. Like how like you think how close it is. I'm like,
Well, and like the whole premise is just so weird. It's like they go to a camp and dig holes, but then you read the book, or watch the movie, either one, and you find out what's all going on, and the whole mystery around the town and the camp and what happened years ago, and how that relates to Stanley and his family, and they're them being cursed from the old country, and it's just everything. I love how it all just connects to each other, and I'm like, you are just an adorable little movie, and I love you. So I don't know, that one's just sort of a yes, this one's great, you just go watch it or read it, either way.
Again, it's a Disney one where it's like, hey, they got that right.
Yeah. Which in recent years, it's been it's like Disney stopped adapting books because you're not doing a very good job. But that one they did good. Which we have another one on the thing, and I confess I have not seen A Wrinkle in Time. I know it's on Disney Plus, but I have not heard good things about it.
I haven't either. I'm just like,
I remember I read the book when I was younger, and I really liked it, so I was excited for the adaptation. But then I was hearing not just the actual critics, because I very really pay attention to them, but people I know, and I know their taste in movies compared to mine, and they were like, I don't know about it. So I might watch it just because I'm weird like that. I'll watch something I hear it's not that great, and I'm probably not gonna but I'll still watch it. So more of a curiosity, I did with Artemis Fowl.
Yeah, it's I want to see how bad this is, and it's oh, okay, I'm going to skip that one.
Yeah. It's I'm gonna pretend that this didn't happen.
Yeah,
there's some things where people are I'm just gonna watch it for the sheer train wreck that it is. But
and then
that's time you can never get back.
Yeah, it's more fun to watch YouTube reviewers rip it apart than it is to actually watch it.
We'll have to put a list of some of our favorite review channels in the show notes. It's Dominic Noble.
Yes,
I love his reviews, especially because he does a whole series about adaptations, and he'll explain the differences, what they left in, what they left out, what they changed, whether it was good or not, and some he just rips apart, and it's funny. It helps him with a British accent, so it just makes everything funnier. But
on that note, two more that are in the ugly category that I put there: Aragon and the Percy Jackson series. Because excuse me, because I know Nostalgia Critic, he's got a huge following, and I watch his videos, and he's hilarious. But his videos on Aragon and on the Percy Jackson series, they kind of relate, because it's the whole formula chosen one thing, and so he kind of picks that apart. But just kind of his takedown of both those movies, which are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But it's just kind of like, because both of these were more Aragon, I guess, than Percy Jackson, but Percy Jackson's kind of in there too. Was sort of like the whole, we need to cash in on the popularity of Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragon is just kind of bland, is part of the problem. Now the source material isn't much better, but it at least, you kind of felt like there was a point to it, even if it wasn't the most riveting thing. The movie's just this is a cash grab, and you can tell. Same with the Percy Jackson thing, because it's just like, okay, wow, you guys totally lost all of his snark, all of the humor, all the stuff that doesn't make sense, and yeah, it's just, I mean, the I think even Rick Riordan has come out and said, I just cashed the check, guys. I'm sorry that the movie was bad, but they paid me for the rights. And I'm like, I can't blame you for that.
Nope.
I can blame you for a lot of things, but I can't blame you for that one.
I have a kind of a story with Aragon. Like, I like the books, and I mean, when the movie came out, I got excited, and I went to see it with my great-grandparents and my cousin, who also liked the books. So my cousin and I were both really excited, and her parents, my aunt and uncle. And when we came out of the movie, like, my cousin and I were like, seriously, and even the grown-ups didn't even really like it, and they never read the books. And I joked later on, like, it was more fun because we afterwards, because we got my great grandparents' car broke down. We had more fun waiting for the tow truck than we did with the movie. We're talking December. It was December in New Jersey, so it was cold, but it was we had more fun like hanging out in the car than seeing Aragon. Because Aragon's supposed to be like this fantasy, like you'd expect it to be fun, but it was like
there are dragons involved, and it's
exactly
still boring.
There's
Holy
dragons,
cow.
there's elves, there's like, I don't know. I don't even remember how that movie went. I only saw it that one time.
And you also kind of feel sorry for Robert Carlyle.
That's true.
He's in this movie too.
He is, and I'm like, I hope they paid you well for this role.
Yes.
I totally forgot he was in that. Like I said, like I only seen that one time, and it was obviously before Once Upon a Time, so like I wouldn't have made that connection.
And even because I ended up with the soundtrack, even the soundtrack is so generic. It's just like, like the one of the songs is like, it's basically Chosen One, the song. it's like here's your store brand generic Chosen One song. I'm like, okay. But yeah, it's not very good, which is sad because the concept is great. It's just the execution is poor. And I guess we'll just round out our ugly, so we can try to end on a high note when we talk about the good ones. The Cat in the Hat. Holy cow! I mean, why did you do that?
Oh boy.
I mean, we could point to a lot of travesties in book adaptation, book to film adaptations, but oh boy, there are some. I'm like, I've watched that movie and I'm like, I don't think this is actually for kids.
This is more for the grown-ups.
Yeah, like I'm not. No.
Mike Myers might have had a little more hand in the writing than.
Yeah. I'm like, this is Dr. Seuss, guys. I mean, Grinch kind of skirted the edge, but it was acceptable.
Yes, it went over heads. Yes.
Yeah. Cat in the Hat didn't.
No, some of them were real blatantly obvious. It's like, seriously? Come on.
Yeah. So that one because I mean, it's the Cat in the Hat book. Everyone's read it. Everyone at least likes it, if not loves it. It's like that's just like the epitome of childhood. That's how you learn to read. generally,
Mhm.
and no, not those terrible jokes.
Yeah.
Are not safe for work, children.
Yes.
I like I haven't seen it. Like I haven't. I'm like, and I'm like, I'm curious. Like,
Save
what?
yourself the
Like,
brain
like
cells.
yeah, like
Yeah.
like what's good? Like how?
That's another one. That's another one that you can just look up on YouTube, look up a review of it, and watch someone else,
And get clips that way.
die slowly inside.
Yeah.
support a YouTuber instead of this travesty of a film.
I mean, with Dr. Seuss, has there ever been really like? I mean, has there ever been like a good feature length adaptation?
Live action?
No.
No, not really.
Animated? Can't
Yes.
close.
Yeah. Well, and even some animated it's been hit or miss. Like they did like
Yes.
the Borax several
Mhm.
years ago, and I don't think it did fairly well.
I haven't.
Obviously,
seen-
we've got our classic Grinch,
Right.
Burl
Borax
Ives,
was weird.
TV cartoon that gets
Yeah.
played every Christmas. The one that they did a couple years ago, because we talked the Grinch actually a couple Christmases ago, when they did the feature length with Benedict Cumberbatch as the voice of the Grinch. It wasn't bad. I mean, it's definitely they were expanding upon the universe to make it feature length, but it still had the heart
Mm-hmm.
that the original Grinch story had. So it wasn't terrible. Yeah, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. So, but yeah, Dr. Seuss, it's like it doesn't need to be made feature length. Any of his
No.
Or there should almost
keep it
be
to
an
the half-hour thing and call it good.
Or there should be an unwritten rule. You don't touch that.
Yeah.
I
No
know.
touchy.
No touchy.
Kind of like Back to the Future. Do not remake this. Do not make this.
Exactly.
Stop.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it, but I know on Netflix they have a TV series for Sam I Am, I think.
What?
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Like I was like on Netflix one time and I saw them. Like they made like a little movie and then like I saw episodes. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's probably
wait.
short for little kids. So,
but it's like
I'll
and,
take
like,
a look at it.
I was looking
I'm a
at
little
like
weirded out by that.
the plot, like none. Like it's definitely not the book from what like I can see from like the little plot
little description card
writing.
thing.
Yeah, the descriptions, that word. It's like
I have morbid curiosity. I am prepared to be disappointed though.
Yeah.
But they have been doing a lot of. I've noticed like on the streaming services there are a lot of TV series based on like picture books, the little kid picture books, and I'm like there's a lot more here than I would have expected. But anyway, that's another topic. But pointing that out.
I think I'm still stuck to like I remember when I was a kid, I like it was like a collection of VHS tapes, and it was like it was basically the story with animated pictures. I remember loving that as a kid. Like,
yeah, those were fun. I liked those. I remember seeing those around. But let's see what else. Well, one sort of sub.
So we can move up to the meh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
let's move in the positive direction here.
Yes. We could rant for hours, but we got more to cover. The Hunger Games series, I suggested putting it in the meh category.
Yes, I agree with that.
Purely because again, the first one I liked, although the shaky cam, it makes you car sick.
Yeah.
The second book or the second movie was pretty good, although there's stuff I wish they would have kept in. The splitting it into two movies, that's when that trend really started to get on my nerves, and I think it did for a lot of people.
And then one of them was so dark. I can remember being in that movie theater, and I was fighting to stay awake because of how dark the picture was, and then you're in a dark movie theater. And and I can't remember which one it was, but it kind of dragged a little bit. I'm just like, I found myself nodding off. It's like, no, I need to stay awake.
Yeah, and I mean, there were parts of Mockingjay that I was like, okay, we do not need to spend all this time on this thing, but you've made it 2 movies, so yes, we do have to spend all this time. It's about, again, it's Battle of the Five Armies. You know, you're stretching this out, and it doesn't need to be, and you're kind of boring me because this is something that could be like the last third of a movie and be the climax. But yeah,
you couldn't have just made that movie number 3 just a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, they needed to make more money.
I know. It's a search for more money. Same thing with Divergent, except they never made the second part of the third book of that one. And I'm like, well, I hope you learned your lesson.
Yes.
One thing that they did well with the Hunger Games, which they could have easily screwed up, is the fact that in the Hunger Games books there's so much inner dialogue and monologue in Katniss's head that they had to figure out how to pull that out.
Yes, and that is, I agree, that is one thing they did well, is communicating that information in other ways. And I mean, it kind of makes Katniss a little less likable in the movie, but then there are other characters that are so much better around her that I'm like, I'm here for like Haymitch or Cinna or what's the guy with the beard in the first movie? I can never remember his name. Game Maker.
Oh yeah, the Game Maker. Yeah,
the Game Maker guy with the funky beard, or Stanley Tucci's character. I mean,
Yeah.
I love him. You're not supposed to, but you do.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I watched this.
Well,
one,
yeah, I mean, it's, some of the characters they're able to, at least in the movies, they're able to expound upon their character so that you get to know them more, and they're not just one-sided as they kind of can be in the books. Like, I found myself like enjoying and almost empathizing with Effie a lot more in the movies than I did in the books.
There's no way they'll cancel. They can't.
Baby bomb was a stroke of genius. Unfortunately, games are still on. This is goodbye for now.
Presents for the boys.
What is this?
Your token, remember? Hair for me, pin for Katniss. Gold bangle for you, and for Peeta, the medallion that we talked about.
Thank you, Effie.
We're a team, aren't we? And I'm so proud of my victors. So proud. You're so... Well, you both deserved so much better.
Thank you, Effie.
I am truly sorry.
I totally agree there.
Yeah.
I mean, she does have a certain amount of empathy later, but yeah, in the movies, she's one of the best.
Yeah. So, and obviously, we can't begrudge them for having to take certain scenes and change them, and certain actions and things in the last movie because of what's his face?
The passing of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, yes.
Plutarch's character, the actor who played him,
Yeah. So they had to work around losing that character who had a lot more to do.
Yes, he did.
I mean, they got most of it, but there was like that one crucial scene at the end where Haymitch says, he wrote you a letter. And and he reads it out. So
yeah. So
but yeah, I mean they did well. There's just a lot more that they could have done better.
Yeah.
But it was still good.
If they could have got rid of the shaky camera in the first movie, I would have liked it a heck of a lot better.
That is true. I mean, as much as I did like the first movie, I did feel pretty seasick walking out of the movie.
I liked watching the rest of them better.
Yes. It's just like Dramamine warning.
Yes.
Take something for motion sickness if you suffer.
Yes.
I'm gonna admit,
this is not the Blair Witch Project.
No, it's like you don't need this, but I mean they got the contrast of the glitz and glamour of the capital versus the rest of the districts pretty good.
Yeah. That's just something that I'm glad, if anything else, with the when we get an adaptation of something like that where it's like I want to see this come to life.
Yeah.
And they make it happen, and it's bigger and more outrageous than anything I could have actually imagined. It's like they try to explain that the people of the capital are just so ostentatious and have no clue of the suffering of the other districts. But then when you actually see it in these crazy outfits, and it's like, oh, this is fabulous. I love it.
Yeah. And it's like you can tell that the costuming department had fun with it, but then you realize what you're saying. It's like you had fun design. I mean, we could talk. That's another subject we could talk about. Is the sort of the depravity of the elitists of the capital, the dystopia versus like those. Yeah, but I mean the costume design was fantastic on all fronts, which I guess is the point.
Yes.
But anyway, so there's Hunger Games. Ready Player One. I admit I have not read the book, nor have I seen the movie, so I'm gonna leave this to you guys.
Book is fantastic.
Yeah.
Movie, they did what they could because of so many hoops they would have had to run through.
Yeah, there was a lot
licensing.
Yeah, it just if you just wrote down like all of the intellectual properties that even just mentioned once in the book, it would be so long, and it just would have been so expensive for them to license everything. That this movie it would not have happened. Plus Steven Spielberg, he's got obviously everything he's got that he did that gets mentioned in the book, he's automatically got the rights to. So he's like, oh well, I can use all my stuff. But then the other stuff, and then there are some things that they changed.
Granted, I can see why, because trying to put some of the stuff that was in the book in movie format, I could kind of see where it would drag and people would get bored.
Yeah.
Even though I found it completely interesting and just steamrolled through the book.
Yeah. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, probably more people are going to recognize The Shining than they are. What's the 80s movie that they're supposed to use with the video games? Not The Last Starfighter, but
Tron.
No, War Games. Is it War Games?
War Games.
Yeah, War Games.
Could have been War Games. Yeah.
That most people are going to recognize The Shining versus War Games. So switching it from that to that, I can kind of understand. Although I kind of wish they kept the bit where they have to do Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but that's just me.
Yeah.
There's a lot more like games and clue finding that the Gunters have to go through to get through all the stages of the scavenger hunt, essentially, that they cut out because it would have dragged this movie on a whole lot. But then at the same time, they took advantage of adding things like that opening race sequence, which isn't part of the book, but it gives you an opportunity to put in a lot of Easter eggs of the properties that get name dropped. It's one of those that just finding the balance, but then the fact that just the licensing, I'm sure, was just a nightmare.
Yes. And speaking of, Ernest Cline has dropped news that he is making book 2, Ready Player 2, in November.
So
So
if you've
look
not
for
read
that.
the book and or seen the movie, you may want to get on that before the next book drops. And they may or may not make a sequel.
Right.
So it's definitely in the meh because there
was so much potential.
Yeah, and the world building Spielberg did pretty good with showing, it's kind of like the Hunger Games where you've got a good majority of the country is not in the best shape. There's
Right.
poverty and overpopulation and some people are struggling. And then there's people with money who aren't.
And they go on to this almost
but
Second Life type thing, to paraphrase an old gaming online virtual world where
with the Oasis.
The Oasis, yes.
Yeah. But there's things with some of the secondary characters where they like made changes to some of their character characteristics that I'm like, really? Do you really have to change that way? So so there's some things where I'm like, yeah, you didn't necessarily need to change that. And then the others I'm like, yeah, I can understand why you changed that just from a sheer logistics standpoint, because the book is just an intellectual property nightmare. Yeah. But I think all things considered, I think Spielberg did a decent job, but it could have been better. It's not his best, but it is Spielberg at the end of the day. So you got a certain bar of quality that you expect from the Spielberg movie, and he at least achieved that, which is why he's in the category, I think. So.
And the end of our meh category, there are plenty more, I'm sure, is when I put in Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, the movie that came out in 2004, which was based on the
one with
first,
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, one with Jim Carrey. It was based on the first 3 books of the series, which, if you know how short the books are, that decision made sense. And it was fun. It was quirky in its own way. There was still I can't really point to a certain one specific thing that made it meh rather than good, other than it just kind of felt too crammed of the story. But I mean, the design was good. The characters were pretty good. Jim Carrey was not too bad as Count Olaf. I just remember walking out of the theater thinking, I want this to be more. And then Netflix comes along and does their series where like every episode is it's like each book gets 2 episodes, I believe. Yeah is how it is. And that one was a lot of fun, and Neil Patrick Harris is Count Olaf in that one, and he's hilarious.
Yes.
But then there's Patrick Warburton doing the deadpan narration of Lemony Snicket.
That makes the whole thing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to think of when I heard they were casting him as Lemony Snicket, but I'm like, no, he's perfect. You did good. But so yeah, the TV series is great. The movie, they tried. They did a really good job. They could have done better, is basically what it boils down to.
It was funny, like I remember when like the movie came out, like I was in the middle of, because at the time I don't think the entire series was done, was it?
I think they might have had like 1 or 2 books left to come out.
Yeah, because like there was 13 books in the series, if I remember right.
Yeah. Oh no, wait.
And
okay. Yeah, because the book series ended in 2006, I want to say. I'd have to look that up when the last book came out.
I remember reading them, and like I remember hearing the movie was coming out, like I remember even at the time thinking, I think it would probably work more as a TV show instead of a movie.
Which
and
time proved you right.
But yeah, like I agree. Like I didn't. Yeah. When I went to see the movie, like I didn't hate it, but it was also like I wasn't lost. I can't talk today, but I also
you weren't
wasn't
wowed by it.
Exactly, I wasn't wow. Like, okay, that happened. I didn't hate the time I wasted watching it, but like you said, it could have had
the
more.
epitome. It is the epitome of a meh movie. It really is.
Yes.
But I only mention it just because the Netflix series is so much better.
Yes.
So there's a plug for that. But that's the end of our. Oh, what's that?
I was just gonna say you definitely should like see watch the Netflix and read the books if you haven't. They're not to everyone's taste, I know, but I enjoy I enjoy that kind of humor.
Yeah, it's kind of this dry, dark humor, but appropriate for kids. So it's it's its own quirky little thing.
The last book was published on Friday, October 13th, 2006.
Ah,
that's
how's
right.
that
Because
for a release date?
Yeah, because I remember because my sister's birthday is October 26th, and she was turning 13 that year. And I was like, it's 13 days before her birthday. She's turning 13, and it's Friday the 13th. And 13th is 13's a big number in the series. It's a 13th.
And it's the 13th book too.
I was gonna say, like the author, and I love even like how like the author, like the whole like there's like secretive about him.
Yes.
Too. But like I was like you tell that sort of like the author would have loved that little like kind of coincidence going on.
Yeah, I just had to laugh about it, but and the only reason it's my sister Allison, and she loved that series, so that's why I was like, it comes out 13 days before your 13th birthday, and that's hilarious. So yeah, so those are good. So now we're up to our good category.
Yeah.
Two that I added with a little star by them because the movies are nothing like the books. But the movies are actually better in my opinion, and they're both very different. One is Warm Bodies, which is it's a zombie romantic comedy. That was one I tried to read the book before I saw the movie, and I just could not get into the book at all. I mean, I'm sure it appeals to somebody. It doesn't appeal to me. I only went and saw the movie because a friend of mine, it was her birthday, and she wanted to go see it. And I was like, okay, I'll go with you. I loved the movie. The movie was so adorable, as much as a love story between a zombie and a regular human being can be.
I was gonna say you very rarely hear adorable being described for a movie that's related to zombies.
Yeah, I mean all the things that people complain about Twilight, like he's so creepy because he's stalkery or this. It kind of works because the guy in this one's a zombie. Because zombies are that's just how they are. So I mean they make it work, they make it funny, but there's a lot of heart behind it that I never really got from reading the book. I didn't finish the book, I just couldn't get into it. And then the other one is Princess Diaries. I read the book. I did not like Mia in the book at all. She was just way too caustic, and I did not like her personality or her friend. I think they still named her Lily in the book, but the movie is one of my favorites with Anne Hathaway.
Yeah,
that one is
Julie Andrews.
in fact, that's why I read the book. So I was like, oh, I love the movie. When I read the book, yeah, nothing like it. Yeah. So there's another mark for Disney as you didn't adapt it exactly like the book, but in this case it actually worked for you. So there you go.
I haven't read the books, but I've only seen the first movie, so
I like the first better than the second. The second's all right. The first is better.
Yeah,
as with many things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's move a couple more that are on our good list that are on the older, because a lot of what we've been talking about is all within like the last 20 years. For the most part. So, but they, like I said, they've been trying to adapt written works into movies since the dawn of movies, modern cinema at least. But a couple that are on the older, quote unquote, older side that are really good is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes.
That one,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Mhm.
First off, that one cemented my love of Gregory Peck, first off.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I love that book. I read it in high school, and I just, Scout
I
and
fell-
Atticus are
I
like
fell
my
in love with it.
yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Scout and Atticus are my all-time favorite father-daughter duo.
Mm-hmm.
They're wonderful, and the movie is just beautiful. It's one of my favorites. And again, yeah, Gregory Peck is Atticus. Again, dream casting, perfect casting.
Yes.
Could you imagine them putting anybody else in that role? I can't.
No.
Nope.
And two, just the fact that he's a single father.
Yes.
Doing the job that he did. Normally in that time period, those kids would have been shuffled off to aunts and uncle, and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah, and they talk about that in the book about how they, especially Scout, where it's like she should be learning how to be a lady. She should be doing this, and Atticus is like, no, I'm doing my best I can, and he does.
Yeah.
And, and not just teaching him, but doing it by example, and that's
yes
a big chunk of what the book is about, and the movie.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's one of those.
And they wanted to keep that authenticity from the book as much as possible. And in fact, they wanted to film in Harper Lee's hometown in Alabama, but they couldn't, because that's what she based the fictional town in the book on. But the town had changed so much that they didn't they weren't going to alter it, so they built they had to make a set in Hollywood instead. But they did model like the courthouse based on the actual courthouse. If you go to Monroeville, Alabama, that's the courthouse. You'd feel like you walked into the film set. In fact, they actually do use the old courthouse to do the stage production To Kill a Mockingbird there now. But yeah, and get Gregory Peck as Atticus. When they approached him for the role, he jumped at it. He did not hesitate for a second to take the role. He's like, absolutely. And Harper Lee was absolutely it wholeheartedly gave it a thumbs up. In fact, in the liner notes for the DVD release, she ended up writing, so when I learned that Gregory Peck would play Atticus Finch in the film production of To Kill a Mockingbird, I was of course delighted. Here was a fine actor who had made great films. What more could a writer ask for? The years told me his secret. When he played Atticus Finch, he had played himself, and time has told us all something more. When he played himself, he touched the world.
Yeah, that one, it's one of those few books and movies that I was introduced to in high school that have just stuck with me. I mean, you read a lot in school and you hear a lot, you see a lot in school, but that one I've just held on to, and that's one I actually rewatch quite often. When the fancy strikes.
Yes.
And then another older film, and this is not one that's a beat for beat adaptation, and that's why I actually enjoy it so much, and why I put it in the good category, because it's a good way to adapt something and quote unquote modernize it for a broader audience. And that's the 1961 movie musical West Side Story, which is based on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Because no offense to people out there that enjoy them, and have played parts. I can't stand Shakespeare. And I just find it boring and hard to follow. And there's been
it does take a certain talent, I guess.
I don't have it apparently.
That's okay. That is okay. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and you know, there's so many movie adaptations of various Shakespeare works. I mean, there's a version of Romeo and Juliet out there with Leonardo DiCaprio, but they speak. It's actual Shakespeare, and it's like no. So to take West Side Story, which is actually adapted from a stage musical, but still, they made it in a way so it's it's understandable. At the base level, it's a romance between these two teenagers that are from different sides of the tracks essentially, and they found love with each other, but their social situation they find themselves in, and their family situation they find themselves in is not the most ideal for kindling a romance. And the music is catchy, and it is kind of kitschy, or it is an early 60s musical movie. It's from that same era, My Fair Lady and other movie musicals of the 50s and 60s, but it's so well done. It's shot really well. I love the music in it. The acting is great, and it tells that story of Romeo and Juliet without all the thys and these and thous, all the flowery Shakespearean language that I just cannot stand. So the theme is there, but it's the core, the heart of the story is there, but it's done in a way that's way more accessible and palatable to a larger audience. So just because you want to do Shakespeare doesn't mean you actually have to literally do Shakespeare.
I've never seen West Side. Well, I like William Shakespeare, but I have to admit I hate Romeo and Juliet. I've never.
And that's the one I always had to read.
That's the one. They always give it to your freshman English class, and it's like nobody ever understands what it's about. It's like I could go on, but I'm not going to, because we've got more to cover. But yeah, it's like what you think Romeo and Juliet is about. It's not really about that.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, you can get that interpretation and still understand it and enjoy it. Fine by me.
Right.
And another author who's had more booked movie adaptations than you've had hot dinners. This one I love. And it's kind of more of a dark horse, because everyone goes to the big 5-hour Pride and Prejudice miniseries, but I love Sense and Sensibility, the 1995 version with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet. And Alan Rickman's in it, and
it's the only reason I've watched that one.
Yeah, it is. Like Emma Thompson wrote. I think she co-wrote the screenplay, or she wrote it. She was involved. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's my favorite Austen story. It's just because it's a little more, I want to say, grounded, I guess. Even though sorry, I've got Lottie and she's being fussy.
She's giving her opinion.
Yes.
It's like, yes, I want to talk, Mom.
She's like, I've heard you watch some of this, Mom, and I want to give my 2 cents worth of the sounds that I heard.
Yes. I mean, at first it's like Kate Winslet and Alan Rickman being an item. What do you like? That just seems weird, but it works. and it's one of those. It's like it gets the point across just fine. The adaptation is great, and you get the story, and it's yes, it's a romance. There's also a lot of social commentary and history to it too.
If the weight of these thou canst not show, weigh but one word which from thy lips doth fall.
He certainly is not so dashing as Willoughby, but he has a far more pleasing countenance. There always was a something, if you remember, in Willoughby's eyes at times that I did not like.
It is no more at all, nor is the earth the less or loseth aught. For whatsoever from one place doth fall is with the tide unto another brought. For there is nothing lost that may be found if sought.
Shall we continue tomorrow?
No, for I must away.
Away? Where?
That I cannot tell you. It is a secret.
You will not stay away long.
Of just how people lived and what they were expected to do, and how they did everything. So it's one of my go-tos when I'm in the Austen mood, and I love it.
Lottie's like, my opinion's mixed.
Yep. Maybe when I'm older.
Yeah, she's like love stories. I don't like boys. I'm like, well, you're only 6 months old.
Yeah.
Like, boys, no, not boys.
Boys.
Don't like boys. Except for my brother and my daddy. And my grandpa. And our last, at least for this, because like we said, this podcast would be 5 bazillion hours long, so we had to limit ourselves.
Yes.
I have a feeling we're gonna come back to this.
Yeah,
I'm thinking so. Yes.
Yeah. But one of the last on our good list, so we can end on a high note here, is The Martian, based on The Martian by Andy Weir, which had Matt Damon as a astronaut who gets left behind on the planet Mars and has to figure out how to survive. And everybody thinks he's dead. And the book is a really good book. It's a fun read, even with the science. And I love the fact that Andy Weir actually did his research. So a lot of the science is based on legit science.
Yes.
But the science even put into the book, it's not so textbook-y that you're like, oh my God, this is boring. Can we get back to the exciting stuff? Like, because this guy, most of the story is from a single perspective of this astronaut who's been left behind. So he's doing a lot of talking to himself, speaking out loud, complaining about how much he hates disco.
How sure?
100%. Solar panels have been cleaned.
It could have been cleaned by wind.
Back it up. Look at Rover 2. According to the logs, Commander Lewis took it out, Sol 17, plugged it into the hab to recharge. It's been moved.
Well, why don't we just ask Lewis? Let's get on Capcom and ask her directly right now.
No. If Watney is really alive, we don't want the Ares 3 crew to know.
How can you not tell them?
They have another 10 months on their trip home.
I'm sorry, but you have not thought this through. I mean, what are we gonna say?
He's 50 million miles away from home. He thinks he's totally alone. He thinks we gave up on him. I mean, what does that do to a man psychologically? What the hell is he thinking right now?
I'm definitely gonna die up here if I have to listen to any more god-awful disco music. My God, Commander Lewis, couldn't you have packed anything from this century?
And you know, he starts doing a video diary of what is going on, so that gives us a chance for him in the movie to get all of that dialogue and inner thought out in a way that makes sense. Because like we were talking about the Hunger Games, where Katniss has got a lot of internal dialogue, and they had to figure out a way to do that. With the Martian, they can do that, where he can just literally be speaking what he's thinking because he's making this video diary.
Yep. Which he also does in the book, although he might type it. I can't remember now, but he keeps records of everything he's doing.
Yeah.
Plus, in the book, he's got this sense of humor, even though he's in this impossible situation, but he still manages to like kind of keep his spirits up. And that translates really well into the movie.
Yeah.
And then the book also, flashes over to Earth and what they're doing to get him back home. So there's a lot of that too.
And we also get some of his the jibes and some of his fellow astronauts who are back Earthside and their viewing habits, because he sits and watches what has been left behind on the computer drives.
He's like, you got crappy taste in TV, you got crappy taste in music.
But I'm going to watch it and listen to it anyway, because what else do I have to do?
Right.
Like, I am on Mars.
I do love my favorite part of it is how he justifies calling himself a space pirate at the end.
Yeah.
He's taken all the stuff, and technically Mars is international waters, and so he's taken all of the stuff from the habitat, which is American property, off American soil into international waters. So he's like, I'm the first ever space pirate.
Yes.
Like, Mark Watney, you are adorable, and I love you, and I love that movie.
Yeah.
And the book.
Yeah. And once again, casting. I read the book after the movie came out. I'd not seen the movie yet, but I'd read the book. But in my head, anytime Mark Watney's speaking, I hear Matt Damon's voice, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No. And this movie also has a distinction of being one of the few movies that has Sean Bean in it, and he doesn't die.
Yeah.
Yes, that too.
I've not seen the movie or read the book. I have the book. I don't remember how I got the book, but I have the book.
Go read the book.
And
read the book.
I've been wanting to. It's like.
And
I don't know.
It's a pretty quick read once you get in, because you just want to.
Yeah, it's like, okay, when you read Hunger Games and every chapter has a cliffhanger and you're like, I gotta finish this because I gotta know what happens. Martian doesn't really do it that way, but you still feel like you need to keep going. It's like, how do they get this guy back home?
And I've heard great things. It's like, I really want to sit down and read, but for some reason, I just haven't actually done it. I don't know. I'm weird. I hear it's written it's you want to think it's based off a true story, even though this has never happened.
I know.
No one's been to Mars. No one's been left at Mars.
I know. You watch it and you think. I mean, it reminds you of how, if you've ever seen Apollo 13, I'm like, this is just like Apollo 13. I hope. Oh, didn't they get him home? Oh, wait a minute. This is fiction.
Yeah.
Right. But it seems so very, very plausible.
Yes. Yeah. And that's because, like I said, Andy Weir did his research, and they actually do, he based it on actual science and probable science. So I think it makes it easier to read, actually, because it seems so plausible. I mean, there are people that thought that Matt Damon actually had been sent to Mars and left there, but we're going to ignore those people.
Oh, like the opposite of the moon. The moon was fake.
The moon landing, yeah.
Oh gosh.
No, the moon land. I always like to say to the people, not getting this discussion, but I always like to joke that because I've seen it's not my idea. I saw it on the internet somewhere at some point, but it's so funny. I like it. It's like, yes, the moon landing was faked and it was directed by Stanley Kubrick, but because it's Kubrick, he insisted on filming on location.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Yep.
That is a good one.
Yeah. So anyway, those are quite the list that we compiled, and like we said, there are so many book to
We
movie
barely
adaptations.
scratched the surface.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So yes, we left some off that we didn't talk about. So if you have one that you want us to discuss, or you want to put in your 2 cents about, like, here's this one, I think it should be in one of these categories, or discuss why you like it, don't like it, send us feedback and we'll read it out and we'll talk about this some more if you would like. Our email address is fiveishfangirls@gmail.com, and if you can also visit our website, which is the5ishfangirls.com, to find links to all of our social media. You can also download our podcast wherever you find podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify. We're also on, was it iHeart Podcast?
Yes, we're now on iHeartRadio.
Yes, so check us out there if that's something that's in your wheelhouse, because woohoo, we're there, we're awesome. And you can also find us, or you find us on YouTube. We're still putting up our D&D adventures. So the story is getting interesting, and I will say I've been working on a few little interludes, little short story blurbs with Finea and Oceana. So Days of Our Clerics is happening. So I've shown
And
some
that
of
design
it to
is on the
to the ladies
shirt.
here.
On the
Yes.
store.
I've shown some of it to the ladies. I'll have to think about maybe posting it somewhere. I don't know yet, but it's been fun, and we hope you guys have been enjoying it too. And also on our website, you can find links to support us. We have our Amazon store, we have Patreon, we have our merch on Redbubble. You can support us through Ko-fi, that one. It's on there. And then we also have an Audible link. So if you sign up for Audible through our link, and you get a free audiobook and a free trial, and we get a little support back from that. So that helps. So however you wish to support us, whether it's financial or sending us feedback or just liking our pages, we appreciate it. We love you guys. Hope you guys are surviving out there with all the craziness going on, and we're going to be here as long as we can. Hopefully for a long time, but we're around for you guys. So
that being said, we won't be here next week.
Well, yes, okay. I was getting all mushy. We won't be here next week.
We won't be here next week while I take another short break before the fall semester starts at work. I do work in higher ed, and even with the global pandemic, school will still be in session in some capacity, and
life has to go on in some way.
Life has to go on, and the department I specifically work in has to do with online education, so we're going to be a little busy once the fall semester starts. So I'm going to take another short little break and disconnect from the social medias and all of that fun stuff to a point, and get away for a few days. So yeah, we will not have podcast next week. I have, if you are subscribed to us on YouTube, you may have noticed that I was putting up the D&D stuff pretty regularly. I have kept some of that on backlog so that new D&D content can go up while I'm out, because there actually won't be any new D&D content for actually the next 2 weeks. So I wanted to give us a little bit of a buffer there, so we can still have some D&D content go up when we're not creating any new.
Yes, because the week after Rachel's going out of town, Jared and I are going on vacation. It's unfortunate we couldn't time that better, but it is what it is.
Yep, it is what it is. But yeah, so even though So keep an eye on our YouTube channel for D&D content, at least next week, for sure. And then the week after that, we will have podcasts, but we will not have new D&D. So at least not new to us. I still have the backlog that needs to go up. So finding the D&D content, little harder to edit than the podcast. Usually because it's so much more involved. There's a lot more voices and a lot more stuff going on. So it is a little slower to edit, but I have it. It will go up when I get it edited.
So watch this space.
I like the little like beginning when you can do like a recap of what happened before.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to that's I'm really stretching my like script writing and muscles and all that fun stuff. It's like try to keep it interesting for our listeners. All right, so with that, we shall sign off for this week.
This is Brittany Bethlehem saying goodnight.
This is Chrissy saying goodnight from Salt Lake City.
This is Sally from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. An advantage to a movie adaptation over a book? No paper cuts.
True.
Unless you cut yourself on one of those plastic clamshell VHS covers, and in that case,
I have done that.
Get your first aid kit ready.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
You have been listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. You can find more episodes and information at thefivishfangirls.com. Any and all books, movies, games, and any other forms of media mentioned are owned and operated by the respective copyright holders. No copyright infringement is intended or implied. If you wish to support the show, the easiest way is to leave us a rating and review. More ratings and reviews will make it easier for others to find the show. If you wish to support us monetarily, you can do so at patreon.com/5ishfangirlspodcast. All money goes towards fees and equipment to keep the show going. For official Five-ish Fangirls merchandise, visit redbubble.com/people/5ishfangirls. We love hearing from our listeners and encourage feedback. You can email us at fiveishfangirls@gmail.com. You can also like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/5ishfangirls. Thank you so much for listening, and may the squee be with you.